Hi there, this is Josh from the Redneck Homestead channel. Thanks for joining me. About a year ago, I purchased an old WC Toles model number 65 iron work vise, an old woodworking bench vise. And I purchased it on Craigslist from a fellow that had recovered it from a fire. He unfortunately lost his entire house and workshop in a devastating fire. And when he recovered it, it was all rusted and corroded and oxidized, and nothing on the vise worked. It was all bound up. And I was able to get it for like $35. It's an unbelievable deal. These antique vices are selling on eBay now for a couple of $100s, and they're just a paragon of craftsmanship and innovation, especially for the day. I took the video of the restoration. I broke it down. I cleaned it. I oiled it. I reassembled the vise, and I did this about a year and a half ago, somewhere like that. And lo and behold, computer guy's hard drive failed, and so I lost the footage, but I was able to recover all of the footage, and I thought I would share it with you because it's really neat. And for those of you who like old tools and restoring old tools and things like that, it's kind of a trip back in time in a way. But I hope you enjoy this video. The footage is pretty lengthy, so I split it up and edited it down to 2 separate videos, and I'm going to release them both very close to one another. If you like this video, I really do appreciate giving us a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, I'd love to have you subscribe to the channel. We've always got some pretty cool projects going on around the Redneck Homestead. Thanks a lot. Well, here we are. We've got the antique WC Toles number 65 iron work vise here on a work table here. And the very first thing I want to do is I want to identify all of the moving parts. I want to shoot a little bit of lubricant on there to help loosen up some of the oxidation and the rust that has accumulated on this vise over the years, and as a result of the fire that it endured. I have this WD-40. I guess it's called a rust release penetrant spray. It's kind of like an enhanced version of WD-40. And I've used it in the past, and it seems to work well. So before the video, I shot up most of the moving parts with a little of the spray. It couldn't hurt to do it again, and so I'll do that. You never know where a piece of oxidation is binding up an assembly like this, and it could be one tiny little area. You may think that that part is not movable, and it's totally movable. But just because it's been bound up for so long. Alright, now I've identified some moving parts on here. We've got this screw assembly here. It's a threaded assembly that runs through the front vise jaw here, parallel to these runner poles, I guess you might say, the track assembly. Then we have the stationary mounted rear jaw of the vise, and we have this back plate here. Now the screw assembly and these tracks run to this back plate. The screw assembly is fastened just using a simple cotter pin, and these runners here attach through the front portion, the front jaw, using these 1¼ bolts, nuts, that are on the threaded end of these runner tracks here. Now there's this collar that covers the screw assembly here that's fastened with these 2 oversized flathead screws. I've loosened them up before the video just because I didn't know what I was going to get myself into if I tried to loosen these things on camera, and I'll tell you what, it was not any easy task whatsoever. I have this super large flathead screwdriver which really allows me to torque on this, and I was able to loosen things up nicely. Now they come nice and clean. Now whenever you're taking an assembly of any kind apart, especially something that you're not familiar with, something you haven't done before, I really recommend getting one of these little plastic bins here to put all your nuts and bolts and screws and washers and cotter pins and parts and pieces in. Nothing can be more frustrating than dropping your hammer or your screwdriver on your workbench, it hitting one of the pieces of a part of a device that you're disassembling. And before you know it, you're on your hands and knees, you're looking for that one screw. It's a proprietary part. You can't find it at the local hardware store or Lowe's or Home Depot. So these are invaluable. So this collar comes right off here. It's like a little semicircular collar. Put that in our little bin for later use. Now underneath here, the screw assembly, you can see it's very badly rusted and corroded down in this region here. And we're going to end up cleaning this up. Now I'll use my screwdriver to point, but underneath here, on this stationary rear jaw, there's this movable piece in here, and it's a threaded half nut assembly. That's what this is. And what this allows for is when the screw, when the user uses the handle to rotate the screw, this half nut threaded receiver here causes the entire vise assembly to slide on these tracks here. So we need to take this apart. Now, like I mentioned before, there's this cotter pin right here. And before the video I loosened that up as well. This should come out with no problem whatsoever. There it is. Put that in our little bin. Now, we have a bigger problem here. In order to get this apart, we need to loosen up these 2 1.25" nuts that are fastened to the ends of this runner track here. So I'm going to spin this thing around. And it's entirely possible that I may need to fasten this vise into my other bench vise so it doesn't move when I'm trying to torque down on this. Now, one way to handle this is with a large crescent wrench. I set it to precisely what the diameter of the nut is. We don't want there to be any stripping of the nut during the process. We insert it here, and I'm just going to use a hammer to tap on this. It's starting to come off nicely. So nicely, in fact, that I can unthread it just using my fingers, 2 fingers. It's a big old nut. Put that in our little jar. We'll do the other thing on the other side. This one hasn't been loosened at all. This one's not being nearly as cooperative. And there it comes loose. That was fairly easy, actually. Much easier than I thought it would be. Even that's coming off very easily. Now, I expect that this is going to come apart with very little difficulty. So I'm going to put that other big nut in here. I'm going to lay this vise down, making sure to hold the assembly nice and tight. We don't want it to come apart unexpectedly in any way. And the way I envision this coming apart is just like so. Remove it, and there you have it. Now what I want to make sure is that I can get this screw assembly to spin relatively easily, and it certainly does. Now it appears that this set screw that we just tightened enables the user to lock the vise. It almost appears to be something that can be turned or removed and added as needed. Back off a little bit here. Well, now we're down into 2 parts. We have this receiver assembly, that half-threaded nut that I was talking to you about. It appears to have a little spring in here. It almost looks like a firing pin from a gun, but it's got this little pin on the inside. It's got a spring around it. Goes into this little hole. It's kind of neat. Now that leaves one thing left to move back and forth. And that's the actual stationary jaw to the vise. And if you tap it, it does move. The way I'm going to do it is I'm going to put the heavy portion of this vise here. Then I'm going to tap using a block of wood. I recommend using a really hard wood like a maple. This is a block of maple here. It's coming free very nicely. Takes a little bit of work, but not too bad. The reason I'm using that is I don't want to damage the threaded ends of this running track here, which in the future would make it very difficult for me to rethread those nuts on. And the alternative, you could use a rubber mallet. It'll probably damage the rubber mallet pretty badly. Let's see if I can get this off by hand. Lo and behold, it's come apart. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to soak these pieces in oil. I'm probably going to do so for a day or so. I really want to loosen up this rust and all these pieces. I really want to get this thing nice and clean so all these pieces are moving freely. And then I'm actually going to polish this using a polishing wheel, some other mechanized tools, because I really want this vise to look brand spanking new. And we'll return. When I have more to show you, we'll be back on camera.